Most games decide to make their lore synergize with the main storyline in a sensible way, but there are some exceptions to this. Some particularly disturbing exceptions in the case of these entries. Here are some games that, upon first glance, may appear to be quite innocent, but are actually full of references to a dark and gut-wrenching kind of expanded lore. Though they rarely mention it explicitly, their cutesy design and gameplay geared towards younger or wider audiences are merely a facade, concealing some kind of post-apocalyptic nightmare or eldritch horror lurking in the shadows. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 deceptively innocent games with incredibly dark lore. Number 10. War with the GOTORO Empire, Stardew Valley. Although Stardew Valley is seen as a cozy, comfortable kind of game, there are a number of pretty eerie things that exist within its lore. The game is filled with monsters, ghosts, and magical beasts, but truth be told, all these mystical creatures are not nearly as disturbing as the full-scale global war taking place away from your friendly small town. While you're having fun petting chickens and growing parsnips, the nation of which Stardew Valley is a part of is engulfed in a bloody conflict with the tyrannical government of the GOTORO Empire. You can find numerous references to the war throughout your game, but it's in your second year that you uncover in Stardew Valley an actual soldier who's a part of the conflict firsthand. Kent, Sam's father, returns to town with a clear case of PTSD. The man struggles to fit back into Stardew Valley, and everything around him keeps reminding him of the war. Some of the items you can gift him can even cause him to have flashbacks to the time when he was tortured in one of the GOTORO's prison camps. And you thought working for JoJo was bad. Number 9. Post-apocalyptic squid civilization has replaced humans, Splatoon. There are quite a few dark themes explored in Splatoon's colourful world. You have the wars over shrinking dry lands with the Octolings, the blatant discrimination within the Inkling society, and a bunch of weird stuff like mind-controlled super soldiers and mutated salmon people. The most disturbing part, though, has to be the one that hits pretty close to home these days, and that's the reason why the Earth is completely devoid of humans. According to the official timeline of the game, Splatoon's world used to be populated by humans, but due to rising sea levels, all land-based creatures drowned and went extinct. The game points out that the Great Deluge was caused by global warming, which humanity first ignored and then accelerated when the desperate nations of Earth started waging nuclear wars on each other in a vain attempt to secure whatever meager amount of resources were left. This doomsday scenario sounds like something out of Fallout, and yet it's a part of a game where Squid Kid hybrids shoot each other with squirt guns, so there you go. Chilling. Number 8. Nuclear Extinction, PIKMIN. The setting of PIKMIN might look bright and colourful, but in reality, it's all just a clever front, concealing a very dark concept of humanity's future. More specifically, that humanity has been completely wiped out in a nuclear disaster. Though it's never actually confirmed, the game does leave a bunch of hints that have caused rampant debate throughout the fanbase over the years. The first and most obvious hint regarding humanity's existence are the small objects like soda cans, bottle caps, and batteries that the player can find throughout the levels. The planet the PIKMIN takes place on also resembles Earth, or rather a hypothetical version of it from 250 million years in the future called Pangaea Proxima. But what about the nuclear stuff? Well, in the original PIKMIN, one of the very first objects that players can find is a Geiger counter used to measure radiation. The counter in the game is constantly clicking, meaning that the entire surface of the planet is highly radioactive. Of course, a lot of this is speculation, but you can't deny there is something eerily creepy about the empty world of PIKMIN once you remove the pretty flowers and aliens. Number 7. Adorable, life-consuming parasites, Bugsnax. Back in 2020, the internet decided to kick off a viral craze saying that Bugsnax was really going to showcase the incredible graphical powers of the PS5, despite being a game that was clearly aimed at children. Or was it? When the game finally came out, it actually did end up pushing some boundaries. The only catch was, they were more of a graphic than graphical kind. It would be no exaggeration to compare the twist ending of Bugsnax to the plot of John Carpenter's The Thing. In the final act of the game, the player finds the lost explorer, Lizbert, who reveals to them that the cute and tasty Bugsnax they've been collecting the entire time are actually incredibly dangerous parasites, ones that transform the person's body and take control of their brain. Keep in mind that this revelation was given to you after you'd spent hours feeding Bugsnax to your friends on the island and laughing at their food-shaped bodies. Not only did the game turn Bugsnax into a terrifying hive mind, it decided that you were the monster at the center of it all, so well done. Number 6. The origin of the GROX, SPORE. The cartoony life simulation Spore is all about making light of the history of evolution. However, once the player reaches the end of the game, things take a pretty dark turn. Easily the most recognizable species in Spore, the GROX are a super advanced civilization of cyborgs that serve as both the main antagonists of the game as well as its greatest mystery. They're inherently hostile to all other forms of life in the galaxy, and every single faction you come across is afraid of them. Very little is known about the GROX, but the ancient records the player can find mention that their species was created as some kind of experiment that turned rogue and started exterminating entire civilizations. The Galactic Adventures DLC even has a mission that lets you experience a GROX invasion firsthand. Their motherships, equipped with life-destroying toxins and ravenous hordes of cyborgs, look so different from the typically cartoonish style of Spore that you'd almost think they belonged in Mass Effect. The most disturbing part of the GROX's lore, though, is that you never actually find out who created them. Their maker's history seems to have just evaporated from the galaxy, so you can't really be sure what they're capable of. Number 5. Brutal Murderers, Puyo Puyo. Puyo Puyo is a weird mix of Tetris and Dr. Mario that was created as a spin-off of a Japanese franchise called Mado Monogatari. The spin-off ended up being more successful than the original and was eventually turned into a standalone franchise. However, it did retain some of the storyline and the lore of its source material, including some pretty disturbing stuff. The characters in Puyo Puyo are all mages in training that all attend a mage school together and have small misadventures. This all sounds pretty innocent, but in the Mado Monogatari series, those little misadventures were actually really graphic. The characters would straight up kill enemies in the school dungeons by decapitating them, all fully displayed in gory detail. Oh, and by the way, this is all happening while they're only 4 years old. It may not seem like such a big deal since Puyo Puyo is a dungeon crawler, but here's the thing you gotta know. The writer for Puyo Puyo, Utako Yoshino, is a huge fan of the Mado Monogatari series and has stated that she wanted to integrate the game's lore into Puyo Puyo, meaning that those murders the character committed at the age of 4 are likely canon. Number 4. The Great War, Pokemon. Pokemon lore is riddled with all kinds of morbid concepts, both intentional and unintentional. You have Pokemon that are known for kidnapping children, dead people appearing out of thin air, and of course, a wide selection of criminal organizations bent on destroying the world. However, there is one piece of Pokemon lore that's so grim and out of place within the happy world of Pikachus and Jigglypuffs that it's boggled the minds of fans for years, and that's the Great Pokemon War. The first reference to the conflict came from Pokemon Red and Blue. Lieutenant Surge, one of Kanto's gym leaders, mentions that he served in the war alongside his Pokemon. The creatures apparently saved his life. This line in and of itself is pretty vague, but Game Freak decided to expand on it in Pokemon Black and White. The games mentioned that the war was a large-scale conflict between Kanto and the Unova region. They also acknowledged that Lieutenant Surge, despite living in Kanto, is a born and raised Unovan. Was this information really necessary, Game Freak? Did we really need to know Lieutenant Surge and his little Raichu killed Kanto soldiers before opening a gym in their territory? That's just messed up. Number 3. Olive's Murders, The Sims 2. If there's one thing that can be said about the Sims series, is that the Sims are really, really weird. Between woohooing ghosts and playing rock, paper, scissors with the Grim Reaper himself, the games really enjoy mixing the dark with the silly. However, in The Sims 2, there's a pre-made family called the Spectres. The matron of the Spectres, called Olive, is highly suspected to be a serial killer with over 20 Sims buried in her backyard. According to her memories, Olive fell in love with the Grim Reaper at a young age and began to kill people so she could summon her forbidden lover and spend a brief moment together. Her preferred method of luring her victims was to seduce and marry them, which is why she'd inherited a great fortune. For a cartoony simulation game, that's some really heavy stuff. I mean, the only thing that can make it more heavy is if she killed anybody by putting them in the pool and removing the ladder. But who would do that? Not you. Number 2. Mario the Poacher, Donkey Kong. When you think of the original Donkey Kong for the arcade, you picture Donkey Kong as the angry evil ape and Mario as the hero who saves the day. However, according to interviews with Miyamoto, the truth behind their in-game feud is actually not so black and white. The legendary Nintendo producer admitted that the reason Donkey Kong kidnapped Mario's girlfriend was actually because Mario was keeping him locked up in a cage. The poor ape was simply seeking revenge after the seemingly heroic plumber took him from his natural habitat and stuffed him into a tiny metal box. But whatever, right? Maybe Donkey Kong deserved to be imprisoned. Somehow, for reasons. Except in Donkey Kong Jr., the sequel in which the titular son needs to rescue his dad from Mario's evil clutches, it's revealed that Mario is actually running a circus, and he uses the animals he imprisons to do his bidding. Mario's appearance in Donkey Kong Jr. is the only instance of the character being portrayed as a villain. However, given how the game does expose him as a poacher and animal abuser, it sure does leave an impression. Number 1. Humanity's New Home, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby games are possibly the best example of how looks can be deceiving. Their characters are cute, their villains are lovably cartoonish, and yet the world they inhabit is filled with references to the fall of human civilization and the cataclysm that caused it. Those subtle references to humanity's fate existed since Kirby 64. The most recent game in the franchise, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, is actually fully based around this concept. It throws the player right into the middle of a ruined human city and lets them discover the fate of its creators. According to the story, humanity was at some point visited by a malevolent life form from outer space, called Fecto Elphilis. The creature arrived on Earth by creating a dimensional rift and immediately began to eradicate all life in sight. Humanity eventually managed to capture the life form, but not before it had done irreversible damage to the planet. After this, the humans decided to use Fecto's dimensional rifts to migrate to a new world, more specifically, Kirby's Dreamland. And if everything so far didn't sound messed up to you already, fans have speculated that the adorable Waddle Dees in the game are actually humans, malformed by interdimensional travel. So yeah, Kirby's been eating humans this whole time, and that is not information you can unknow. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other cute looking games with deceptively dark lore. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonnell, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.